Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to the Gaily Show. I am John Parker. It is 33 minutes after the hour. A couple weeks ago, we broadcasted live from the Home Hope Health Minneapolis Mayoral Candidate and Voter Education Forum, and then AM 950 Radio aired that full forum live. You can find that on our YouTube channel. But we here at the Gaily Show wanted to continue that coverage, so we are inviting candidates for Minneapolis mayor to join us for a conversation specific to the LGBTQ community. We are the only ones on the radio that are doing that coverage, and we are continuing those interviews today. Where a candidate joins us, will be given the same questions as all the other candidates and the same amount of time in which to answer them. We've curated all of these interviews with the candidates into a special playlist on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thegailyshow, where you can find you can watch the videos, or you can it's been a long day of talking, folks, or you can go to am950radio.com to watch the individual episodes yourself, or everywhere you stream your podcasts. Today our guest candidate is Alejandro Richardson. Alejandro is a union carpenter born and raised in South Minneapolis who believes that the two-party system needs to be left behind and that Minneapolis deserves great local independent candidates to rebuild our city into what's best for all Minneapolis residents. He is a rank-and-file union carpenter and the elected vice president of Local 68, representing approximately 2,500 members throughout the Twin Cities Metro. He is the current chair of the union's executive committee, and he has previously served on the bargaining committee negotiating its commercial agreement, which covers over 10,000 members. Mr. Richardson, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoy your show.
Thank you. So can we start by you sharing with our listeners specific actions that you've taken in your career that have supported the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked closely in all my careers in my short time in the working world. So the last 15 years or so, closely with coworkers who identify as LGBTQ. I've always done everything I could to support them, whether it be just as a friend and a coworker, or during times where they felt pressure or some sort of grievance from our employers. So I started off working in restaurants and bars as a bartender and a server here in Minneapolis, and I had a number of coworkers that identified as either as gay, and they always felt my full support. They've always known that I'm a safe person to come to talk to with any issue. And now in my current role as the vice president of my local, I always do everything that I can to reach out to those members, knowing that coming especially into my field, into commercial construction, it can be a little bit intimidating. It's not a field that has long been accepting of different lifestyles and values, particularly those of the LGBTQ community. And so just letting them know right off the bat, like as soon as I make any contact with them, hey, like, I don't see you as any different than anybody else here on this job site in my union, and you have my full support. And if anybody gives you any shit, just let me know.
I just want to be mindful for our FCC folks. We shouldn't swear on.
Yes, yeah. Geez, sorry, just got off the job site.
No, you're good. You're good. I just want to be mindful of that. We don't need
Absolutely.
looking at us right now, particularly this
No, we
week.
don't. No, we don't.
My next question to you. In 2024, according to exit polls, 86% of LGBTQ voters cast their ballots for the Harris-Walz ticket. However, since November, pollsters for Legacy Media, the Democratic Party, certain think tanks, certain Democratic governor have called for centrists and moderates and independents, as well as the larger Democratic Party, to either downplay LGBTQ rights or just stop supporting rights altogether. But this comes at a time when the LGBTQ community is facing the Trump administration, who is banning LGBTQ school curriculum, ending educational supports for LGBTQ students, revoking federal funding to colleges who provide LGBTQ services, banning transgender service members. As mayor, how would you reconcile this fight between those who want political leaders of all kinds to downplay or walk away from the LGBTQ community when the community needs the most support vis-a-vis the Trump administration?
Yeah, great question, John. So this is something that I see as one of the, as you said in my introduction, one of the major failures of our two-party system, of our major parties, both the Democrats and Republicans, that they are so beholden to these larger forces that we know kind of only serve a certain number of interests, and they're going to go with the kind of the popular flow or whatever's going to, for lack of a better way to say it, sell the most votes. And so as we've seen kind of this resurgence of conservativeness in general, um, it's it's hit the Democratic Party and the progressive side of our political spectrum as well. And so, as mayor, what I would do to reconcile that is make very clear that I don't align with any of the greater party values or any of the information that's being kind of forced upon us about what we should or what we shouldn't do, because that's what's going to get us the votes, whatever. I would take a very clear and strong stance that no, Minneapolis is a safe home for LGBTQ members, for people seeking sanctuary, whether they be trans, whether they be an LGBTQ identifying member, or someone who's just looking for support and maybe questioning, whatever it is that they are. And so just with all, starting from the top down, I believe that the mayor is the spearhead of that fight, that they need to just set a clear example, not just optically, but both in their policy, that we're going to continue to advance this fight and protect the rights of those individuals.
We're talking with Alejandro Richardson, who is a candidate for Minneapolis mayor. Early voting is currently underway. You can find your ballot and polling location at vote.minneapolismn.gov. There you can also find information on how to register to vote. Election day is November 4th. Mr. Richardson, our news partner, Windy City Times in Chicago, has discovered that in Chicago, no major hospital provides gender affirming care anymore to trans youth because their federal funding was threatened by the Trump administration. In Michigan, their attorney general put hospital systems on notice, saying that the availability of federal funds from the Trump administration should not and does not determine whether or not those healthcare systems should comply with state laws. In Pennsylvania, a complaint has been filed by trans patients with the state's Human Rights Commission against a hospital system when they stopped providing trans healthcare services after threats from the Trump administration. As mayor, how would you support healthcare systems in Minneapolis to continue providing gender affirming healthcare and hold them accountable if they stop?
Um, Clearly, right now, this is kind of a big legal fight, and I am by no means am I a legal expert on really any subject to the degree that maybe like a lawyer or our city attorney would be. So the first thing that I would do would be to consult with them and say, hey, like where do we need to be making inroads? Where do we need to be, taking this fight to whatever level of court it needs to be taken to, and making sure that they understand that that is a fight that we are willing to have here in Minneapolis, that we're willing to challenge all of those attacks. And should direct calls need to be made to the federal government, I would be more than happy to make those calls, to have those tough conversations and say, hey, I understand, that the federal government has its agenda, but here in Minneapolis, here in Minnesota, we have our own way of doing things. And I agree with, I believe you said Michigan, the stance that they took, that the availability of federal funds is not what determines the access to healthcare and the following through on state law surrounding those things. So making sure that our laws are duly enforced and upheld within the courts.
My final question to you today is, what specific actions would you take as mayor to stand up to the Trump administration's anti-LGBTQ executive orders? And there are a lot of them, which includes freezing federal funding to force our compliance to those executive orders.
Um, I think that I think that conversations need to be had. This is one of the major reasons why I'm running. That I believe that our progressive left wing, as good as they are at certain things, they are not always the best at reaching across the aisle, and they're not always the best at playing ball with some of these conservative wings, particularly in our federal government. And so, having conversations with them, saying, it's hard to say what specific actions, one city mayor can take against the federal government, because they do, frankly, have a lot of power. So I would be more interested in a diplomatic solution, saying, hey, is there a way that we can back off of this a little bit? I will meet you at the table and I will hear you out. But at the end of the day, this is an overreach of federal government, and there needs to be a way for us to make some kind of compromise that allows states to retain their independence on these issues, because that is something that I believe that we're completely entitled to from the state to the city level, apart from the federal government. So again, it's hard to say that there are necessarily policies that I could put in place on day one that would protect us from these actions, but I will have every conversation needed with every expert on the subject within the city government, and then take that to the federal government and say, hey, I understand that you haven't liked the way the Democrats have been pushing back on this. I am not a Democrat. I am an independent. I was a registered Democrat for a long time, full transparency. But through seeing kind of the ineffectiveness of that party, it led me to identify more as an independent and say, you know what, we need to be bringing both of these sides closer together rather than continuing to draw these divides.
Thank you for that. Those are all of my questions, but we still have some time before the commercial break. So would you like to tell our listeners why you're running for mayor of Minneapolis?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I've covered it a little bit so far in our interview, but the real, what it really comes down to is when I looked at our list of candidates, and now having gone through this process and been a candidate and gotten to know a lot of the other candidates, I have a lot of respect for them all. And when I first looked at my own choices as a Minneapolis voter, I'm a 30-year resident of Minneapolis. My entire life I've lived here, and it's the only place that I ever intend to call home. And seeing the list of candidates that we had and understanding what our prospects were in terms of, the potential victors in the race, I didn't see anyone that really inspired the idea of change in me. And I have always been someone who's been very adamant that if you can identify a problem and you have the capacity to do something about it, then you should do so. And I have never ran for public office before, but I have been a leader in my community and in everything that I've ever done my entire life. And I always will be. And so this message that, it's really working class residents of Minneapolis that deserve to hold seats in power, and that we know not only deserve to be represented by our elected officials, but we deserve to be among them making decisions at that table. I think that's really what's going to bring us back, because we understand, we're facing a number of challenges in Minneapolis, similar challenges to many other major cities across the US. And the idea that, to be frank with you, the idea that either a current sitting mayor that we have, or an app developer, a lawyer, a DC staffer, or a seated politician, these are all cards that we've seen played before, and it's never worked. It never has, and I don't believe that in the near or medium term future that it ever will. I think that it's up to working people who have the capacity to do more, to step into these roles of leadership. It is going to be us that bring forth the decisions in policymaking that benefit everyone. Because we are all selfish people. We're all human beings are going to do what's in their own best interest at the end of the day. But having somebody at the table whose best interests really align with the majority of the city, with the majority of the constituents, I think that's incredibly important. And so, it's a message that is at this point still kind of a long shot, and it needs to be carried forward. And so, Minneapolis, it's inevitable. Maybe you're not ready for me right now, but we'll see you in 4 years if not.
We're talking with Alejandro Richardson, who is a candidate for Minneapolis mayor. Early voting is underway. You can find your ballot and polling location at vote.minneapolismn.gov. There you can also find information on how to register to vote. Mr. Richardson, thank you for joining me again today.
Yeah, absolutely, John. It was a pleasure. Keep fighting the good fight, doing the good work that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Folks, you can find more information about Alejandro's candidacy. You can visit alejandroformayor.com. We're going to take a quick break here, but there are still lots to come on the Gaily Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk where facts matter.